Haven't made that mistake in a while. Muted there. Apologies for that. Charles from GMAT Ninja here. Welcome to episode 2 in our GMAT Focus Quant Starter Kit. Just to be totally clear about what this is and what this isn't. So just a reminder, this is entirely GMAT Focus. We are going to do a little bit of data sufficiency in here, which appears on the data insights section. We're going to mix them together because if we're talking about absolute values and inequalities today, doesn't make sense to separate those out. So we'll do a little bit of data sufficiency, mostly problem solving. Now, this video is not for you if you're already scoring at the very top end of the score scale. It's meant for people who are struggling a little bit. Maybe you're right around average, maybe a little bit below average, scoring somewhere in the 70s or close to it, maybe low 80s on the GMAT Focus Quant section. This is for you. We're going to walk through the basics super, super quickly, but more importantly, this is all about your mindset, your flexibility, helping you understand what the GMAT does and does not do with inequalities and absolute values. That's the key here. Get your mind right, understanding how those very, very basic things that you might have learned in middle school, high school, maybe even undergrad, how they're going to layer those up into reasoning problems, make it a little bit more complicated for you. Now, it is not a math test. The section is called quantitative reasoning for a reason. They're not going to melt your face off with super complicated things. They're going to take very, very basic things and just twist them up a little bit, give you different looks, give you numbers where you expect variables, variables where you expect numbers, symbols that are maybe in a place that's a little bit different than you expect. That's it. That's really all they can do. We're going to go through that, talk about kind of the scope of what they can and can't do with these, and then launch in a handful of questions today. Once again, 4 videos in this series on the drawing board for this month, February 2024. We already covered the basic algebra, linear algebra, quadratics, how the GMAT likes to layer those into word problems. Inequalities, absolute values today. Also going to feature some word problems. Last 2 in the series next week. We're going to talk about how to handle really, really tough arithmetic. That's going to be Monday night, February 12th, 5 o'clock Pacific time in the evening here in the US. And then our final one in this series for now will be on percents and ratios. If you love these videos, please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments. Tag me on YouTube, GMAT Ninja Tutoring. Tag me on the GMAT Club forum, just at GMAT Ninja. Let us know what works for you. If you want to see more of these videos, certain topics you want to see covered at this starter kit sort of level, let us know and we'll produce more of these if there's enough demand for them. All right, with that, let's get into some of these basics. We're going to do 5 full questions today. Before I do that, I just want to walk through what you want to be thinking about in terms of absolute values and inequalities. Even if you're like, yeah, those questions on the board are easy, I know what to do with those. Bear with me. I'm going to give you some hints here that are really going to help you down the road as they start layering these up a little bit, making them look a little bit different for you. So pretty much everybody here, I'm pretty confident, knows how to solve this, right? You look at this and go, well, what does that absolute value symbol do? That's just going to sanitize out the sign. That's all it's going to do. So what we're saying here is that X could be 4, or X could be -4. Easy enough. Now, probably pretty easy for most of you as well. I can start throwing other things in here. What if I go X -3 in there instead? Hey, it's the exact same thing. Now we're just saying that instead of X being equal to 4, it's X -3 is equal to 4, or X -3 is equal to -4. Really simple so far. I'm going to assume that everybody here has handled this before. If this is totally new to you, go hit a Khan Academy video, something like that. Maybe do a refresher on kind of basic high school, college algebra. So far, I'm assuming anybody kind of coming to this video doing the GMAT has seen at least this. Now, where I start to see heads explode, where our students come in and go, nah, I'm afraid of absolute values. Absolute values really get me. Here's the thing is they just start making this look a little bit different. I start seeing heads explode when we do little tweaks and we say, well, all right, what if we stick a 2 over here maybe? Well, that's not that big of a deal. All I have to do is divide the 2 out. Isolate that absolute value. All this is saying is X -3 is equal to 2. What other things could they do to you? Honestly, there's not a whole heck of a lot. We can add an inequality in there, I suppose. And then you're going to have to think about it a little bit harder. We're going to go through one like that a little bit later on, but not so complicated here. You just have to kind of think, well, it's not so different. You've got kind of these critical values, something happens where X -3 is equal to 2 and where it's equal to -2. And if you kind of start playing with the values a little bit, you can kind of figure out what this needs to look like. I'm not going to go through that right now, but we're going to see it in one of the questions in just a moment. Honestly, there's not a whole lot else. And absolute values really don't appear a whole lot on the GMAT Focus Edition. You're almost certainly not going to see it on data sufficiency. Very, very rare on data sufficiency on the new version of the GMAT. On problem solving, you'll see it occasionally, but there's not a whole lot they can do. They can kind of embed this with a little bit of logic, maybe. So you'll see this sort of thing occasionally. Well, nothing really technical here either. It's just asking you to say, well, what does this tell you about X? Well, the absolute value of X this entire term, absolute value of x, can't be negative, because again, the sign sanitizes out your negative, times x itself is greater than 0, it must be the case that x is greater than 0 as well. That kind of logic shows up. That's about it. Not much more we can do with absolute values. Again, we can make it look funny. That's about it. If these are freaking you out, for the most part here, guys, I just covered absolute values in however long that took us, 3 minutes. Okay. Over here to inequalities. What we see out of our students, what we see out of folks on the forums, what we see out of folks commenting on our YouTube channels, is we see people getting really nervous about inequalities. And a lot of it, I think, stems from the fact that it feels like there are a bunch of things potentially lurking, and that's it. And it's like, well, no, there really aren't. There's not that much that makes an inequality different from an equation. Here's the way I want you to think about it. Look, you can add and subtract, just focusing on the blue one here for a second. You can add and subtract anything you want to. Anytime to inequalities, it's not going to change the sign. It's not going to do anything. I can say 2x is less than -8 minus 3y. I could slide that 2x over there if I wanted to. Doesn't matter. I can divide by positives or multiply by positives all I want. Not going to change the sign. I can divide by 2. No big deal. The sign stays the same. Now, the only thing that you really, really, really have to watch out for is if you're going to multiply or divide by negative, it switches the sign. You just switch the direction of the sign. Most of you have seen that before, I'm sure. So for example, here I can multiply this bottom one by -1. I get -2x plus 3y, sign flips, and now we get an 8 over here. That's really it. Other than that, pretty much operates the same way as an equation. So that's piece of mechanics number 1. Watch out for it. They're going to disguise it. I know a lot of you guys are probably sitting here going, well, this is dumb. I know this. Yep. I'm probably going to catch a lot of you. So we did a little mini quiz for the people who registered for the live session. We got a bunch on that. I just disguised it the way the GMAT often does. Okay, so that's piece of basics number 1. Piece of basics number 2. I want you to be aware that you can add inequalities. So for example, I'm going to get rid of this one in blue. It's the same as the one that's in that purple now. If I line up these two equations, I can just add these two up now, and I get 3x is greater than 14, and great, x is greater than 14 over 3. What does that get me? I don't know, but I've solved something fantastic. Really, it seems like a really minor thing, but for some reason, there's a whole family of GMAT questions where that really comes in handy, and it's really hard to solve them any other way. Is it a huge percentage? Nope, but it's there. Old GMAT, new GMAT, it's always been there. You run into questions, and it's like, if you try to do this some other way, looking at these two equations and trying to go, what could this be? Or trying to do substitution, that won't work. Can't do substitution here. It's inequalities. Can't subtract equations. That's not going to work. But you can always add them. I just want that in the back of your head. You see two inequalities and you got to do something with it. That's a tool that can really, really come in handy. Honestly, that's it. Beyond that, it's just logic. We can turn these into funky logic puzzles. GMAT loves to do that. All right. With that, we're going to dive into our 5 questions today. First two are going to be kind of anchored in the basics. Just want to give you some reps. Going to give you different looks at it, but they're going to be fairly mechanical on the inequalities and absolute values. Next two, we're going to dive into a little bit of word problems, which you're going to see a lot more of on the GMAT Focus. Data sufficiency, again, on the data insights section, almost exclusively word problems now. If you're studying with an old edition of the official guide from before the change to GMAT Focus, so anything before the 2023-24 editions of the official guide, you're going to see all sorts of data sufficiency questions that are very pure math. Those don't really exist anymore. This first one I'm going to give you actually looks like that, but there's a point to it, I promise, even though it doesn't really look like the new GMAT. But just be aware that your new version of the GMAT Focus, data sufficiency on the data insights section, almost entirely word problems. So the next couple of questions, so first couple of questions, mechanics, next two, word problems, because that's what you're going to see on data sufficiency, and quite a bit as well in problem solving. Final one, I'm going to really kind of poke at you guys in terms of the reasoning ability. Nothing technical about it. But as you get into harder and harder questions, really they're just kind of giving you logic puzzles out of it. Can you find a pattern? Can you kind of work with the numbers, make something happen? All right, guys, if you are watching live, please, 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 within 2 minutes here, I would love to see what you're thinking. If you're struggling with the questions I'm throwing up there, just say that, dude, I have no idea what's going on. Give me your answers right away. Really helps to make the content better. It's what keeps me focused here. So please, please, I'm used to working with students one-on-one. I don't just like talking to a camera. So live crowd, please chatter, please ask questions, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, heckle me, whatever you want to do, but please participate. And as soon as you get an answer to this first question, please pop it in there. All right, give you a couple minutes. All right, if you're watching live, please punch in whatever you got for an answer. If you're lost, please just say, I'm lost. See about 15 of you, and there's a whole lot more people watching. So I'd love to see what you got. Give you 10 more seconds. All right, if you're not watching live, hit the pause button if you need more time. For everybody else, again, live crowd, thank you so much for everybody punching in your answers. I know it can feel weird, like you've got your name on there and you're giving an answer, you're not sure if it's right or wrong. Kate, again, apologies for any mispronunciations. Thank you so much. It's great to hear. I'm not happy you're lost, but I'd love to hear what you guys are thinking, so I know inside your heads. And yeah, pretty much 50-50 here. About half of the folks participating live got the right answer, about half got the wrong answer that I was trying to bait you into. Now, disclaimer here, want to be totally honest. Again, data sufficiency, nearly 100% word problems on the GMAT Focus. The reason I gave you data sufficiency here anyway, even though it doesn't look like the modern kind of data sufficiency question, is boy, it really distills kind of what you really need to be thinking about with these inequalities. Like how can you really screw yourself on a basic thing? This distills it down pretty nicely. All right. Is P less than Q? Okay, most of you are probably jumping right in, looking at this first one and going, well, that's easy enough. I can divide by 3, hopefully, or divide by -3. Thank you so much for the kind words, you guys. I really appreciate it. So divide by -3, you're going to flip the sign. So hopefully all of you that divided by the -3 flipped the sign. If you didn't hear, that's actually not going to screw you that badly. You get P is greater than Q. Well, that's great. The question is P less than Q? Statement 1 is saying the answer is no. P is not less than Q. It is greater than Q. That is sufficient. The way I tend to do these, if you have not seen this before, again, popularized by Manhattan GMAT, don't know if they came up with it. I go through this in detail in a data sufficiency video in the Data Insights playlist. If you want to learn more about that, go ahead and watch that video. Because this is sufficient, I know my answer must be A or D. So I'm going to cross out B, C, and E. It's got to be A or D. Now, here's where you guys get into trouble. It is really, really, really tempting to look at this and just go, yep, okay, I divide by A and I'm great. P is greater than Q. Perfect. My answer is D. Careful, careful, careful. What you want to think about here. So again, in that opening, when I said, okay, what do you need to know about inequalities? Divide by a negative number. It's going to flip the sign. Again, nearly all of you know that coming in. That's not hard. And I'm sure a lot of people are turning the video off going, I know this. Stupid ninja guy. Why is he teaching me this? I'm going to get better at the GMAT. Yeah, okay. But are you thinking about it when you need to think about it? Great case of it. What do you know about A here? Nothing. Don't know anything at all. You can look at this and know that A is not 0, because if it was 0, this statement couldn't be true. Okay, but you don't know whether it's negative or positive. So P is greater than Q. That is true only if A is positive. If A is negative, it can flip the other way on you. So this is going to be true if A is less than 0. Because we can't get a single unambiguous answer to this question, not sufficient, and our answer must be A here. All right. This, again, my disclaimer here, you're not going to see something that looks exactly like this. Can they turn this into word problems? Yep. And more importantly, just more broadly, they're going to play with that. It is the heart of inequalities in terms of the mechanics of it, is dividing by a negative is going to flip your sign. It's one of the most common things you're going to run into. We throw a variable in there. Just keep your head on and go, wait a minute, what am I really dividing by? I just want that in your head as you do inequality problems. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed that one. Next one, another one that's fairly mechanical. Then we'll jump into the word problems on question 3. Go ahead and take a couple of minutes here. right, live group, I'll give you about 20 or 30 more seconds. If you're struggling, just say you're struggling, pop in an emoji, something like that, please. And if you got an answer, punch it in there, please. All right, hit the pause button if you need to, if you're not watching live. Interesting live group, mostly doing pretty well with it. And I think this is the kind of thing where either you're comfortable with the mechanics or you're not. If you're comfortable, there are some ways you can make silly mistakes. And you hear this in all my videos. I'm going to say it again. Apologies for anybody who's watched a ton of these and is tired of hearing me say it. Adaptive test. It will knock your head off if you make silly errors. Check your work, watch your back. If the mistake you made here was not kind of a fundamental conceptual one, like if you basically had this down, but you ended up with a negative in the wrong place or something like that, that is the kiss of death on an adaptive test. Remember, it's trying to find the level of question at which you get roughly half right, half wrong. So if you start missing easy questions that you are capable of getting right, the test is going to go, this person doesn't know what they're doing, give you more easy questions, and you get yourself into real trouble. You just get disproportionately punished by bad errors like that, errors on questions that you are capable of handling. Really watch your back, check your work. And yeah, seeing some folks asking some really good questions here. This is ugly. Do I back solve or do I solve straight? This is one that you can, I'm going to show you how to solve it pretty straight. Thank you so much for that question. I suppose you could probably back solve, but it's going to be a little bit ugly. So I'm going to show you how to solve it straight, just get you through the mechanics of it. And this is about as complicated as a GMAT absolute value and inequality problem can get. They can get harder, but you're not necessarily going to see a lot more in an equation, or in an inequality. I punched as much in there as I could all into one. And again, looks very much like some official questions. All right. Goal number one, I just want to get this absolute value term isolated first. So I'm going to add 7 to both sides. Again, I can add anything I want, either side of the inequality. Doesn't change the sign yet. 6 times absolute value x minus 4 less than 42. Somebody yell at me if I make a silly error. I'm going to divide by 6. Again, positive. I can do that, no problem. 42 divided by 6, I get 7. Okay. I'm going to speak mostly to folks here who struggle a little bit on this. A lot of you might have learned this really, really well somewhere. This gets taught differently in different parts of the world, I've found over the years. In the United States, generally speaking, we teach this really, really badly. My Russian students, my Indian students, for example, my Eastern Europeans, most of my Asians, usually just kind of look at this and go, boom, I got it. And they just have a quick way of doing that. If that's you, fantastic. If this is easy for you, wonderful. You don't have to listen to what I'm going to say next. For those of you that look at that and go, I don't know what to do with that inequality with the absolute value there, this is for you. I'm going to show you the more intuitive way to do it. It's not the only way. It's just the way that I think you're least likely to make a mistake if you aren't already familiar with another way of doing it. All right. Here's what I'd recommend doing if you're new to this. Pretend that this is just an equal sign for a second. So I'm going to treat this like an equal sign. I'm going to put it in a different color. Absolute value of x minus 4 is equal to 7. Now it isn't. We're going to change it back to the inequality in a second. But looking at this, so x minus 4 is equal to 7. So x is equal to 11 in that case, or x minus 4 is equal to negative 7, in which case x is equal to negative 3. All right. Inequality now, that something happens at these two values. A couple things you can do. In this case, the way this particular question is written, hey, you've got your answer here, basically. Like, even if you're kind of lost, it's like, well, hey, it's got to be D, right? Because negative 3, 11, this is the only one that has those two values in it. Okay, maybe you hold your nose and guess that and move on. Now, depending on how the question's written, you might want to be really confident that x is between those two values, which is what's said in D. Here's what I would do. Here's kind of the general tool that can help you on a variety of questions, data sufficiency or problem solving. I know that these are two critical values for the inequality. Something happens at negative 3, something happens at 11. And now use your human brain, meaning just be intuitive. Just think through, like, let's come back to this inequality here. All right, what could x be? Could x be 0, for example? Yeah, you bet. Could it be 5? Yeah. X could definitely be somewhere in this range, right? Could x be 100? No. We get something that doesn't work. Could x be negative 100? No. So what you can do on these questions, if you've got an absolute value in an inequality, And again, some of you have a slicker way of solving it. If you do, good for you. For those of you who are uncomfortable, this is the intuitive way, pretty foolproof if you think through it. Pretend it's an equal sign, solve for those two values, and then just think about it a little bit. Pick some numbers and just go, hey, what has to be true? In this case, x is between -3 and 11. Can't be bigger, can't be smaller on this side. That's it. So absolute values with inequalities embedded. This is going to save you again if you don't have a more technical way of doing it that you're comfortable with. So our answer here, once again, is D. All right. Next two we're going to do word problems, GMAT Focus style. Nothing super, super tough here. Again, not melting your face off with difficulty on these two. Last one in the video might be a little bit tougher. Just want to give you a taste of how they're going to twist this into a word problem. Go ahead and take a couple minutes. All right. If you're watching live, please keep punching your answers, your thoughts. If you're lost, please let me know. And if you have a reaction to the question, love to see that as well. And I'm wondering who that is. If that's BB or Abhijit. But anyway, if I'm gonna, yeah. If you are not watching this live, you need more time. Hit that pause button. Okay. what I found interesting in the live group, and I imagine that some people watching this after the fact are having a similar experience. Really, one of two things happens here. Either you look at this and go, "Oh, I do this. That's it." Or you kind of paralyze and you start kind of spinning your wheels and you get really not necessarily lost, maybe not lost. But there's a lot of ways to kind of start stabbing at this and starting to think about it. And you can spend an eternity on this question and kind of get nowhere. It's interesting in the live group. Took a while to see any answers pop up, maybe partly because the question itself is so long. Didn't get that many people in the live group getting it. Everybody who did say something was, had it right. Not a lot of ways to get the wrong answer, but there's a lot of ways to get paralyzed here. Okay. Questions basically just saying it's very wordy language. And again, this is very, very much like a whole handful of official GMAT questions that are out there on the GMAT Focus. They love this kind of stuff. Hey, we're going to make P screws and Q nails, however many P and Q are from a raw materials shipment. We've got these material constraints. This is how much we can make. What do those things really mean? I don't know, but 5P time plus 3Q. So 5 times the number of screws times 3 times the number of nails. And that's going to be less than 17,000, or 7 times the screws plus 9 times the nails. It's going to be less than 43,000. All right. Now look, you could sit here and start doing a kind of a strokey beard thing and go, well, let me start punching some numbers in here. And if it's all screws, it would be 17,000 divided by 5, which gives me 3,400. Or if it's all nails, it would be some weird number that isn't an integer. And you can drive yourself crazy. Okay, if you watch the first, 5-10 minutes of the video where I walk through the very, very basics of inequalities, you should be done here in, 45 seconds, a minute at most. Because one of the things to keep in mind, not a lot going on mechanically with inequalities and absolute values. There just isn't that much to be done. Again, watch out for the negatives, have your head screwed on, make sure you're always thinking, hey, I can multiply or divide by positives all I want, doesn't switch the sign. But if I multiply or divide by negative, it's going to switch it. Second piece of mechanics, you can always add inequalities. You can't subtract them, you can add them. Substitution, not going to be your friend. It doesn't make any sense with inequalities, but you can add them. So if you look at this and go, I don't really know what the bleep this thing is about, cool, great. That's fine. But let's see what happens if we add them. You don't even have to understand this that well. What do we get? Oh, 12P plus 12Q is less than or equal to 60,000. Factor out the 12 or just divide by 12, whatever your taste might be. I'm going to go ahead and factor it just in case it's not obvious enough. Divide by the 12, we get P plus Q less than or equal to 6 divided by 12, 5,000. And our answer is B. That's it. All right, funky language. Welcome to the GMAT. Going to see a lot of that. Data insights too. Lots and lots of language. I just want this in your back pocket. I've had exams, actual exams, where this sort of thing showed up 2 or 3 times on a single test, where it bailed me out. There wasn't necessarily another clean way to do it. So just keep it in the back of your head for inequalities. It's really the whole point of this question. All right, one more word problem question, and then we'll get into one more hard one in the end. All right, take a couple minutes. And again, live group, love the feedback. If you're struggling, let us know. Give us your reaction. I don't care if it's an emoji. I don't care if it's kind of nonsense jibber jabber that expresses an emotion. That's great. If you have an actual answer, that's wonderful too. All right. Hit the pause button if you need more time. Again, live group, thank you so much for letting us know what you got. Seeing a good variety there, seeing some struggles. Super useful to see. Again, I'm not trying to melt anybody's face off with these. Again, GMAT, inequalities, there's only so much they can do. We can make it feel a little bit painful, but nothing terribly technical here either. It's just a matter of kind of putting the information together in the right way and kind of doing as much as you can with the question itself. I'll get into that in a moment, because my hunch is, kind of looking at the answers I'm getting from the live group, I actually think the problem is more that, but not so much the two answer choices. I think it's taking this and not doing enough with it right out of the gate. We'll explain that in just a second. Before I get into that, two quick things. One is, if you need more reps on this stuff, like you just want more reps on GMAT Focus Quant, GMAT club tests. I might have this number wrong. If I'm not mistaken, there's 28 GMAT Focus Quant tests available, plus plenty of verbal data insights. Go subscribe to those. I think there's all sorts of ways you can win yourself a free week or a free month. On holidays, it's usually free. So if you need reps, great resources over there. One other quick thing, there's a fellow that we don't give enough credit to. His name's Abhijit. On the GMAT Club forum, you'll see the username Naren, Narenn. One of my favorite people out there. He has been, I think it's 6:30 in the morning where he is, pressing the buttons back there, helping me out every time I do one of these live streams. He's there. It doesn't matter if it's middle of the night. So Abhijit, you rock. If you ever see anything from Naren on the GMAT Club forum, just give him a kudos or give him a virtual hug, just because. All right, let's jump into this thing. Okay, we've got a nice long wordy problem. Welcome to the GMAT Focus. We got a salesperson earning D dollars total for the first 12 items sold. And then for each additional item past those first 12, 0.05 D dollars in commission for each item. And we know that D is greater than 500. We want to know, is the number of items sold greater than 28? Big key to data sufficiency. You're going to see me talk about this in all the data sufficiency videos as well. Again, hit that Data Insights playlist if you want a deeper dive into that. They write these in such a way that very, very frequently you are going to be rewarded for doing as much work as you can with the question itself. Don't even look at these things. Do as much as you can with this. See if you can get as many equivalent versions of the question. I want to see if there's a way for me to ask this question in a different way that's logically equivalent. So they're asking, did she sell more than 28 items, or at least 28 items? My bad, that shows me an inequality right there. Or sorry, greater than or equal to. So did you sell at least 28 items, greater than or equal to 28? But we've got all this mumbo jumbo about money here in the commission. So I should be doing something with that, right? Like, let me see if I can translate this in some way. Okay, so what's her commission? So if it's 28, what's her commission? So it's got to be that original D dollars. And then you've got 16 additional items, right? So her commission is going to be equal to that D dollars plus the 0.05 D times 16. That's going to be the commission for 28 items. So I can simplify that a little bit. 0.05 times 16. If it helps, again, one of the tools that can always help you here, if you don't like decimals, that's totally fine. We're going to talk about this in video number 3 in this series. You want to turn that into a fraction. That's great. 0.05, that's 1/20th. I'm going to show it that way. And just rearrange a little bit. Times 16 times D, 16 over 20. So I can rewrite that as a decimal. I can leave it as a fraction, whatever you want. I can certainly simplify it. And I'm going to get 4/5 there. So whatever you prefer, you could do D plus 4/5 D. You get 9/5 D. Personally, I think the decimal looks better there. Just my taste, 1.8 D. Whatever you prefer, it doesn't really matter to me. So we can rewrite this question. So the question is, did she sell at least 28 items? And I've got people asking, where did we get the 16 from? So the question is, did she sell at least 28 items? Well, it's D dollars for those first 12 items. So I want to know, how much would she get paid for 16 more? So if she sells 28, she gets paid D dollars for the first 12. Then she gets paid for 16 more. That's 16 additional, 0.05 for each of those items. That's going to be 0.8 or 4/5 for those additional 16. So if she sells 28 items, she's going to earn 1.8 D in commissions. So I can rewrite the question. Did she sell at least 28 items? I can also write it as, was her commission greater than or equal to 1.8 D? Again, Design feature of the test. Why? I have no idea. I've been wondering that for decades. I've been teaching for more than 20 years now, embarrassingly. I don't know, but there's a whole bunch of data sufficiency questions, always has been, where you get rewarded for doing this work up front. If you jump right into the statements, can get you into trouble. All the work here, and look what we've got. Is the commission greater than 1.8D? And then right there in statement 1, she earned 1.9D dollars in commissions. So right there, we know that one's sufficient. My answer has to be either A or D. Once again, if you haven't seen this before, if you're curious about it, go check out that data sufficiency video in the Data Insights playlist, get into that in more detail. Again, if you prefer to just write sufficient there, that's totally fine. Plenty of ways to do that. You don't need to do this. I personally find it helpful. All right. Statement 2 is actually where the live group, I actually saw quite a bit more trouble with the statement 2, I think, than with statement 1. I think looking at the answers, again, seeing tons and tons of variety there. So the temptation here is to overthink this a little bit and start kind of doing something with it that you shouldn't be doing. We're not saying that D is $500. We're saying it's greater than $500. Okay, so she earned, statement 2 is telling us she earned $1,159 in commissions. Okay, well, what if, so you could look at that and kind of realize right away, like some of you are probably looking at it right away and going, yeah, I know that's not going to be sufficient. My answer is A. Others are going to go, yeah, but it seems like that should tell me something really valuable. Here, it actually really doesn't. So let's suppose here that D is equal to 501. Let's just suppose. If that's the case, then her sales must have been well over 28, right? So $1,159 in commissions. That means that her commission was actually greater than 2D. So she's, I'm sorry, that's not right. What I meant to say there, if D is 501 and she earned that much, it has to be the case that she sold quite a bit more than 28, right? Because 28 would be 1.8D. So her commission, got myself lost here a little bit. Yeah, that means that her sales had to have been quite a bit more than 28, because that would mean that this is quite a bit more than 2D. So the commission is more than 2D. 1.8D is equal to 28 sales. So that means her sales would have had to have been greater than 28. But what if D's bigger? What if D, for example, is, I don't know, how about 1159? That's exactly equal to D. That means her sales were equal to 12. So we've got two very, very much competing answers here. This doesn't really tell us a whole lot of anything, because yes, D is greater than 500, but it could be the case that she's earning well over 2D in commissions. Could be that she's earning D in commissions here. If that's D, then it's the case that she only made 12 sales. If this is the case, her sales were greater than 28. So this doesn't tell us anything at all. And our answer must be A. All right, really good question that's popped up here. Christina, thank you so much for these. So confused about whether to use the more than or equal to sign or just the greater sign. Yeah, so the question there, I think that you're really asking is what are the, and there it is in your next comment here. So what are keywords to know which sign to use? Two ways I would think about that. I want to be really careful not to sit here and say, hey, I'm going to give you a whole list of words to watch out for that are going to tip you off to whether it's a strict inequality. And when I say strict inequality, I mean strictly greater, strictly less, or one that is greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. Generally, it's going to, like, at least or at most, those are going to be the things you're going to see the most often on GMAT questions. So is something at least as great as the other? That's fairly common. If it just says greater, if it just says less, which one is bigger? You're in this world. I don't want to sit here and say, hey, here's a whole list of things to memorize. Usually those are the things you're going to see. That said, honestly, this is where kind of the whole idea of what I want you guys to do on these, especially if you don't have a super, super strong quant background, even if you do, to be honest. I see a lot of engineers get absolutely wrecked by the quant section of this exam. People whose math skills, frankly, are better than mine in some way, a lot more math training than I had as a kid. I actually have a student right now I'm working with, and we've had a lot of really interesting conversations about how, as a kid, she did 3 hours of math a day minimum every day as a kid, every day through high school. When I was in high school, I did about 20 minutes of math a day. I grew up in the United States. They don't give us much homework. Math wasn't a big thing where I grew up. I liked math, We didn't do a lot of it. I didn't get drilled the way a lot of my students do, depending on where you grew up. Okay. So why do these engineers, these people with great quant skills, get crushed by this test? Human brain is off. It's all mechanical for them. Reason I'm saying that is, Christina, because I love these questions you're asking about this. Use your human brain. I want you to read these questions and go, yeah, if I try to think about this as best I can in a real life sense, what does it mean? And that's very, very rarely going to steer you wrong. A lot of good things are going to happen if you look at these and go, yeah, but what does that really mean in real life? We're saying, did she sell at least 28 items? If we said that to you in real life, if I said, let's say there's a box of donuts and you say, hey, Charles, how many donuts did you just eat? I said, I don't know. I ate at least a dozen. You'd be like, yeah, you glutton, you might have eaten 50. Could have been 12, could have been 50. So if you kind of take a real world, real life approach to that language, you're going to be fine. The GMAT is not out to trick you. I can't say that enough. Do they write questions that are hard? Do they write questions that require you to really kind of stay on your toes? Absolutely. They're not out to trick you with the language. That is not what they're trying to do. So use your human brain. If you're in doubt, you're going to be okay. Usually it's going to be something pretty similar to this language, at least at most, or just greater and less. Those are the most common things. But again, use your human brain. Don't think of it as a test of how many of these phrases you've memorized. All right. That was a really, really long answer to that. Christina, thank you so much for asking the question. All right. Any other questions here that we did not get to? Nope. That is it. Okay. Last one. These questions are all original. They're based very, very strictly on a whole lot of GMAT questions that have existed over the years, particularly ones that exist on the GMAT Focus. That said, sometimes I'm not totally clear how hard these are going to be for you. I think this last one's going to be pretty tricky. For most of you, if your goal is something like an 80 on the quant section of the GMAT Focus, I don't really expect you to get this. I expect some struggles, even low 80s, mid 80s. No shame at all if you struggle a little bit. And that said, you guys are going to crush it. All right, take a couple minutes. Give you about 30 more seconds. If you're watching this live and your head hurts, just please type that in the comments. We'd love to see how much pain is going on there. All right. If you need more time, hit that pause button. Kate Ross, thank you. I just really appreciate the candidness there. It's awesome. Yeah, I don't want to go down too far rabbit hole here, but Vamsi, and again, apologies for any mispronunciations. Interesting thing, there are questions on the GMAT Focus. Technically speaking, coordinate geometry is not part of it. Algebra questions. What is coordinate geometry? It's visualized algebra. You could solve this on a coordinate plane. I wouldn't personally, but you certainly could. That's going to be the case occasionally on GMAT Focus. If you happen to be good at coordinate geometry, maybe it comes in handy. I wouldn't study it. I would not spend time doing that. But yeah, if you see a solution that works for you in its coordinate geometry, yeah, knock yourself out. Interesting thing about the GMAT Focus, they say no geometry. Yeah, you could use coordinate geometry if you really wanted to. All right, let's jump in. The reason I want to do this problem, I'm not trying to melt anybody's face off. Maybe you found this really hard. Maybe you didn't. I think most people look at this and they either kind of see it right away or they really, really struggle through and maybe see something happen. The reason I want to do this problem is, yeah, again, nothing technical. We can look at this and kind of say, yeah, if we look at this in a vacuum, absolute value of Q is less than or equal to 14. Well, how many different integers are there that Q could be? Well, it's anything from 1 to 14. It's anything from -1 to -14. And zero's in there too. So there's 29 integers there. Well, okay, fine. But what the heck does this have to do with it? And what we get into here is this is about those layers of reasoning. And this is typical GMAT as you get to harder and harder questions. We're pushing into the 80s score-wise on GMAT Focus as we get into this kind of stuff. It's pattern recognition. It's kind of looking at something and going, can I play with this for 30 seconds, 45 seconds, a minute until I kind of see what the joke is, kind of see what the pattern is. And if you can't, no shame in it. Just say, hey, good job, GMAT. You got me on this one. Mark it, guess, move on. Remember, you can change 3 questions on the quant section on GMAT Focus. If you struggle here, you see this on your test. Hey, good job, GMAT. I'm starting to see the hard ones. That's great. Move on. But see if you can spot the pattern. That's what the quantitative reasoning, those harder questions, that's what it's all about. All right. Does this tell me anything useful about the limitations of when P and Q can be integers? Now I'm looking at this. So a couple ways you could do it. You could just start playing around with numbers, start picking values, start punching some of these values of Q and see what happens. That's one way. It'll get you somewhere if you're paying attention. If you're doing it systematically, it'll get you somewhere. I look at this and go, I just kind of noticed that this thing is a multiple of 3. So's this thing. And it kind of makes me wonder, I think, again, not saying this is something you should memorize. Some of you guys might just know this because you studied number properties. If you have, good for you. I'm not assuming anybody has studied that or learned that as a rule. I don't think it's all that useful. But, if I have a multiple of 3 and I subtract something and I get another multiple of 3, does this have to be a multiple of 3? Well, what I would do on this question is say, I don't know that I would trust that that is automatically a rule. But let me check it out. Let me play with it and see if I can get that to work. See if I can learn something about it. So let me start there. All right. So I'm going to set myself up with a little chart. Just to organize my information a little bit. Let's say that Q, I'm going to start with a multiple of 12 here. What if Q is 12? We get 3P minus 12 is equal to 9. Yeah, P is going to be an integer, right? So 3P is equal to 21. P is going to be an integer. I'm happy. Now, what if I pick something that is not a multiple of 3? And by the way, we can keep going. What about a 9? Guess what? Get another multiple of 3. This is working. I'll bet 6 is going to work. You can check it if you want, or just kind of say, well, yeah, the pattern's pretty clear. 3 works. Now I'm going to try something that's not a multiple of 3. See what happens. Okay. What if this is a 1? Okay, well, we get 3p equals 10. P is equal to 10 divided by 3, not an integer. Okay, so what have I done here? I've proven to myself, and again, if you need to do more reps, try more numbers, go ahead if you're not convinced yet. But I've basically proven to myself here that my suspicion was right. Multiple of 3, multiple of 3. This one must be as well. When I try something here that is not a multiple of 3, I don't get an integer for p. When I pick something that is a multiple of 3, I always get an integer here. So my values of q have to be multiples of 3. Maybe you don't trust 0. Let's try it. Well, 3p equals 9. That's great. That works. Works for all these guys. And we can try some of the negatives as well. Not going to surprise you. It's going to work out. So if we make q, I don't say -9 is equal to 9. Great. 3p equals 0. And that's going to work as well. So -3, -6, -9, -12, all going to work. Again, you can check it out if you want to. You can go test all these. But I'm pretty convinced I'm seeing a really clear pattern. I've got some logic underneath it that feels right. Again, even if you don't know the rule, feels right. And here we go. I've spotted a pretty clean pattern. I've got 9 of them. Again, if you really want to take the time to test them all out, you certainly could. But here it seems pretty clear that I've got something here that's going to work. And if you go test them all out, indeed, it's going to work out pretty well. All right. Hitting the hour mark here. That is it for today. Hope I didn't melt too many of your faces off. A couple questions I'm seeing from the live group. I think most of the specific quant ones have been answered. Yeah, Arena, and again, apologies for any mispronunciations. Great question. What the GMAT psychometricians, the people that designed the test, have told us, 2 things. You only change 3 answers. So if it was more than that, then yeah, you would start to warp the algorithm. For example, if you, let's say you miss 10 questions and then you get to the end and you change those to right answers, yeah, it's going to really mess things up because you get to the end and you've seen all easy questions, but you were better than that when you go and correct them. So that's why that's a big part of why they limited it to 3, is that it's not going to have a huge effect on it. If you'd gotten those 3 questions, let's say right instead of wrong or wrong instead of right, it wouldn't have changed your overall performance so radically that it changes the difficulty. So basically what it does is that it still adapts according to your original answers. When you get to the end, if you change some wrong answers to right, your score will improve some. If you change right answers to wrong, please don't do that. It'll drop you a little bit. So that's how it works. Again, it's not going to break it as much as it would if there were more answers you could change. Again, that's why they limit it to 3. Don't overthink that. I want that in the back of your head, but it shouldn't be something that really drives you. Do your best on your first pass through. Just use it as a tool for letting you skip things that you're overmatched by. So if something's giving you a hard time, don't get stuck, don't get stubborn. One of the worst things you can do is spend 6 minutes on a question. And then even if you could afford those 6 minutes somehow, you're going to drive yourself nuts. You're going to start getting squirrely, start making careless errors. It's the careless errors that kill you. Don't get stubborn because it induces careless errors. So just use those three changes of questions as something to give you peace of mind to say, hey, I can let some of this stuff go, flag it, come back to it later. All right. Christina, thank you so much for the kind words. Really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much for being here and thank you for the participation. Yes, Priyash, we already did a series on the data insight section live here. And I think the links are in the chat, possibly also in the description. Abhijit, maybe make sure those are in there. But yes, it's on the GMAT Club YouTube channel. Full data insight section, all done live, just like this. And again, with all these videos, if you really enjoyed these and there's something specific you want to see more of, just tag me GMAT Ninja Tutoring on YouTube, at GMAT Ninja on the GMAT Club forum. Better off doing it there, but either one, I'll try to respond. Just let us know what you want. And if there's a need for more videos, we will hop in and do more. One last one. I know I've passed the hour mark here and apologies for that, guys. Yeah, great question. I love this. I don't have a super quick answer to this. But I think so many tools for getting better at this. And we have a video on mindfulness meditation. So a couple years back, I did a 24-hour nonstop live stream fundraiser for Ukrainian refugees. I brought on a meditation coach, a mindfulness coach specifically, to give you tools for staying in that moment and not letting your emotions run away from you as you're taking the test. Your job when you see a question, quant in particular, but you could apply it to data insights or verbal as well, maybe in slightly different ways. Your job when you see a quant question is to make a really smart, thoughtful decision about what to do. And I actually mean 2 things by that. If you look at the question, you kind of start playing with it, you read it twice, You try to find paths forward. You're looking for different ways to do it, and you come up with nothing that's going to work or nothing that's going to work efficiently. You walk away, and that's great. Adaptive test. They're going to give you harder and harder questions until you squirm. Don't be a perfectionist. If your goal is an 80, 82, 85, 75, anywhere in there, hey, you're not going to get all the questions right. They're going to get really freaking hard. And a big part of your job, pick your battles really, really well. Let questions go. So when I say your job, the task in front of you is twofold. One is do the question if you know how to do it systematically, do it carefully. Let it go if you don't. Really important. A lot of ways you can get better at that. One is just practicing that and just saying, hey, every question that comes along, I'm going to remind myself, I don't have to be perfect here. I'm not going to get every question on this test, and let go. Think of that as part of your job. That can help you. Practice doing that. If you really want to do a deep dive and you get really anxious looking at some of these questions, mindfulness is a great tool. There are performance coaches. We have a couple at GMAT Ninja who can help you with the voices in your head that freak you out on test day. There's ways to get better at test anxiety in general if that's a problem. But I'd say the single most important tactical thing is to recognize, yeah, if a question is scary, it might not be as scary as it looks, number one. And number two, if it really is hard for you, you read it twice, you try to plot a path forward, you don't see one, just let it go. That is you controlling the clock. That's you controlling the test. It's a good thing. Let questions go. Pick your battles. 45 minutes on quant, 21 questions. If given your speed, everyone's going to be different on this. If you can do 18 questions really well, really effectively, really carefully, fantastic. Let the other 3 go. If you can do 16 really carefully, really systematically, great. Let the other 5 go. But you choose the ones you control. You choose which ones to let go. Really important thing. I don't know if that was anywhere close to answering your question, but I hope that helps a bit. Another good question here. Would it make a difference if you don't change the answers at all? Hey, if you don't need to change answers, don't change answers. Don't feel like you have to use that tool. Just be aware that it's there. But if you use all of your time and you don't have time to go looking back at them, that's great. I personally, when I take the GMAT Focus, I very rarely change answers. I like having a little bit of time to double check. Don't feel like you have to. I think that can get dangerous if you're like, no, I'm going to save 10 minutes to look at stuff again. Yeah, it's probably going to do some errors as well. Don't feel like you have to. Figure out what works for you as you do your practice tests. Okay. Tons of questions here. Okay. All right. I think we're going to wrap it up here because there's some really good questions here, but I think they're best saved for another session. Getting questions about combinatorics. Again, noted, guys, if there's anything you want to see in this series right now, we're planning to do 4 videos in this starter kit. Hard arithmetic, Monday, the 12th, 5:00 p.m. Pacific time here in the US. If you're somewhere else in the world, it might be Thursday morning. And then a last one on ratios and percentages. But if there's something you really want to see, combinatorics, we had a couple people ask about that. Let us know in the comments, let us know in the forum. And if we get enough people saying, hey guys, would love starter level combinatorics, we'll create something like that at some point. All right, we're going to end it there. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and we will see you next time.